seeking reproductive health care in this country. We have two Duke obstetrician gynecologists with us this morning, plus a legal expert to discuss the effects the ruling is already having on access to care. With us this morning is Dr. Beverly Gray. She is an obstetrician and gynecologist and founder of the Duke Reproductive Health Equity and Advocacy Mobilization Team. Also joining us is Dr. Jonas Swartz. He too is an obstetrician and gynecologist and a researcher in reproductive health equity issues. And we have Neil Siegel. He is a professor of law and a professor of political science at Duke University and a former clerk of Associate Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Good morning, good afternoon to you all panelists. Dr. Gray, we'll start with you. We discussed the possibility of this Supreme Court decision in a briefing last month. Now that it's a reality, what's your reaction as a human being and as a provider of reproductive health care?
Thanks, Greg. I think our community was definitely shocked and saddened on Friday, even though we were expecting this news. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to speak for just a moment from a personal standpoint with my own thoughts and feelings as a person, as a physician who provides abortion care as part of comprehensive obstetrics and gynecology care. I hold my patient stories very close to my heart, and I've seen how access to abortion care can save lives. Abortion is common, and my family is like many families in the US who know or love someone who has had an abortion. Back in the early 1970s, my grandmother was diagnosed with an unplanned pregnancy and cervical cancer. And during the pre-Roe era, North Carolina was one of a handful of more progressive states, including California and Colorado. And those states allowed access to abortion in certain cases, including rape, incest, or maternal health risk. So my grandmother underwent a gravid hysterectomy, which removed her pregnancy, her uterus, her cervix, and the cervical cancer that was threatening her survival. And abortion saved her life. Like most people seeking abortion today, my grandmother was already a mother. She was poor, and access to contraception was challenging in the late 1960s. She didn't have a high school diploma, but she worked hard in a second shift factory job to provide for her family. And my dad and his sister were able to go to college. She had a great sense of humor. She had an infectious laugh. And she was a woman of strong faith. She loved God and her family very deeply. And because of her abortion, she lived to meet her grandchildren. And I can tell you that I'm a better person today by having had her in my life. As an individual obstetrician gynecologist, I provide abortion care for patients facing a variety of life circumstances. Some are like my grandmother, managing a life-threatening diagnosis. Some have strongly desired pregnancies with diagnoses of lethal birth defects. But many patients are simply seeking autonomy over their lives and their health. And pregnancy is not part of what they envision for their future. While I will never meet the physician that cared for my grandmother and saved her life, I'm grateful for the care they provided. And I worry right now that at some point in the future, I will be hindered from saving lives like my grandmother's. So I think there are a lot of feelings right now, Greg, and I think, we started our new intern orientation today for our new OBGYNs pursuing this amazing field of medicine. And there were a lot of uncertainties around what their training will look like. So I'm really thankful that we have this time to answer some questions, to get out evidence-based information about abortion care, so that folks can have a better understanding of the potential impacts for the people in our state.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Gray. And Dr. Swartz, you're a father, and like Dr. Gray, you provide a range of reproductive health care to many, many patients. Would you like to speak for a moment on what this means to you on a personal and professional level to have such a profound change in the medical landscape?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And thanks, Dr. Gray, for sharing that story. It's powerful every time I hear it. Yeah, as you mentioned, Greg, I'm a father. And so when this ruling came across, I was prepared for it. And it still was quite a gut punch. And when I think about the impact on our society and the impact for my kids, it's devastating, and it makes me really sad that before Friday, we lived in a country that afforded people, or where this right was a component, part of the fabric of our nation and part of one of the rights that we could count on. People could make their own reproductive choices and help them live their lives in the productive way that they chose. And so it makes me really sad that people are losing that choice. The reason that I went into OBGYN, like Dr. Gray, was that I enjoyed sharing these moments of great happiness and also supporting people in moments of great sadness, right? It's an amazing career where you get to participate in a spectrum of emotions and a spectrum of medical experiences with people. And doing abortion care for that reason is really affirming care. You are able to sit down with someone, help them come to a decision that's right for their life. And then in providing either a medication abortion with pills or providing a procedural abortion, you can, in 5 to 15 minutes, help them achieve something that they want to in the future, help them, treat a medical problem. And that is really, really gratifying. It's an honor to be involved in people's lives like that. So when I think about my colleagues across the country who share my passion for reproductive health care and now live in states where that care is illegal, I feel sad for them, and more importantly, feel sad for their patients that now they have to jump through so many hurdles to get that essential care.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Swartz. And Professor Siegel, as we move on to you, Dr. Swartz just mentioned, as we know now, we have a country in which abortion is legal in some states and illegal in others. And I think one of the most pressing questions that seems to have emerged since Friday is that, are there potential legal consequences for women who cross state lines to get an abortion under this new environment, and indeed for the people that help them? Is that clear? Could there be consequences at the state level for women who do that?
Well, thanks so much for that question, and I will answer it. Let me say first that you mentioned that I clerked for Justice Ginsburg. I think more important than that is what a good friend she was to my 2 teenage daughters, and to many, many teenage daughters who never had the privilege of knowing her. She made us better by understanding that the Constitution is best understood to slowly include within its embrace people who long didn't count or count for much in constituting we the people. She looked at American society and asked it to take seriously the idea that women are people too, and they count. And we've been hearing for a very long time now that those who oppose abortion, and I respect my fellow Americans who have very different views than I do on the moral status of a fetus. But we've been hearing for a very long time now that they're not anti-women. And it is absolutely heartbreaking that we're going to find out what that means. The restrictions that are going to be imposed and the invasions of bodily integrity that we're about to endure, what it means for the state to coerce childbirth now, as far as the court is concerned, from the moment of conception. In terms of your question, there are going to be states that seek to prohibit not just abortion within their own borders, but prohibit residents of their states from traveling out of state to obtain an abortion and then to return home, as well as those who help them financially or otherwise to do that. This is not a crystal clear legal landscape. One would have to go back to the days of slavery to get the closest legal analogy I can think about, in which you have a country deeply divided over a moral question, and states are trying to regulate conduct that happens not just within their borders, but outside of it. There are some other analogies if we were talking about bootlegging, but nothing on the scale of what we're talking about right now. And I'm not saying the abortion debate is just like the slavery debate, but these are not normal legal times. This does not happen very often, that you have states trying to regulate conduct that takes place outside their own jurisdictions. I can tell you that the Supreme Court has protected what's called the right to travel. It's not mentioned in the Constitution. It's unenumerated, like the right to abortion, that the court has now said no longer exists. but the court has protected it going back to 1849, the right to travel. In the passenger cases, 1868, a case called Crandall against Nevada. These decisions were reaffirmed as recently as 1999 in a case called Sayans against Roe. And there are various components of the right to travel. The one that's most relevant to your question and most relevant to pregnant people who are seeking reproductive health care out of state because they can't get it in their own state is the right to enter and leave other states. And I can, with some measure of confidence, count to 5 on this Supreme Court to say that states are not permitted to prohibit their own residents from going out of state to obtain an abortion. The 3 dissenters, Justices Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan, and I assume Justice Jackson, who will soon replace